Hey everyone, welcome back. So this is another video where I'm using RStudio. I'm using the R programming language to demonstrate how to do certain data science tasks and perform different data analyses. And still covering the basics at the moment. What I'm going to do in this video is kind of demonstrate how to use the mutate function to add or modify columns. So this is a really useful function if you have a lot of data tidying, a lot of data wrangling that you need to do. It's one that you're likely going to use a lot. So for example, you could have collected a load of data. You could have different columns, maybe different items or something like that from a questionnaire, and then you might want to create some sort of aggregate score from a series of different variables, such as the mean, work out the mean score on some sort of questionnaire or survey or something like that. Or then maybe you may want to use other variables to manipulate them, and from that create a new variable of sorts. And mutate is the package that would allow you to do a lot of that stuff in R. So what I'm going to do in this video is kind of just demonstrate how to use mutate, and the examples I'm going to use are from a built-in dataset, the flights dataset. It comes from a package called, if I just uncomment this, NYC Flights 13. So I've already installed it, so that's the reason I'd commented out that particular line. But if you don't have it installed, you can install that package using the usual kind of command, install.packages, and then in double quotes in the parentheses as a string, pass in NYC Flights 13. I'm going to comment that out because I already have it installed. I've already done that, but I'm going to have to load it. I'm going to have to use the library command to load NYC Flights 13, and I will also want to load the tidyverse as well. So that will take a few seconds. As you know, the tidyverse it's quite a large packet because it contains a number of other packages, all of which are kind of focused on data exploration, data cleaning, data visualization, things like that. You can see now I've got my, if you look below, it's loaded the different packages in the tidyverse. I've got my command line prompts back. So both of those have loaded up correctly. So what I'll do first is I'm going to use the help command, so question mark, and then I'm going to type in the word flights, which is the name of the data set we're going to look at today. So if I do that, it's executed the command, and we may have to wait a little while. And you can see now, if you look over at my my window here in the bottom right, it's flicked over from packages to the help tab, and you can see it's providing information about the flights data. Comes from the NYC Flights 13 package, gives a load of information about what it's about. So basically it's a big data set about all flights that departed from New York City, so JFK, LGA or EWR, in the year 2013. So it's got lots of different variables involved, such as the departure time, how delayed they were, things like that, arrival time, the destination, flight number, etc. So if I do view, going back over to the script in the top left, if we do the view, run the view command on flights, it'll give us the data set in the pop-up window, or some of the data set. As I said, it's pretty big data set. And that command, it's kind of taking a minute because that command is still running. You can see my environment's empty at the moment. It won't be, there we go, it's finally worked. But what you can see is the reason that took a few seconds to load is we've got 336,776 entries. Remember, that's every single flight in this data set that took off from New York City in the year 2013. And we've got 19 columns. You can see they're a mixture of character variables, datetime variables, and numeric variables. So a real mix of data there. And I'll leave that open as it is, but we could also run the glimpse command. Remember, this glimpse function, it basically gives us a breakdown of our different variables and tells us a bit of information about the data type, and presents kind of the data or truncated version of the data as string. So you can see here, year, integer, month, integer, etc. Some double precision numbers here, departure delay. And you can see some of the first kind of 15, 20 data points in it as a vector from each of the variables. Okay, so that's the data set we're working with. A lot of different variables there, and you might, if you had a data set as complex as this, you might want to create some of your own variables from it. And what mutate does is it allows us to append new columns to the data set that are calculated from existing variables. So, for example, first of all, let's take a kind of straightforward example. What we're gonna do is create a new variable called gain that records how much time a flight that was delayed. So it was delayed when it left later than it should have. How much time it made up whilst it was in the air. Okay, so to work that out, that would be the difference between how late it was leaving and how late it was arriving. So the departure delay minus the arrival delay. So it gives us an indication of how much time the flight has made up. So what I've done here is I've used the pipe operator. I've specified the data, as we've seen this in previous videos where I introduced the pipe operator. So I've said I want to use the flight's data frame and then use the mutate function. And what I'm telling the mutate function to do is create a new variable called gain, and that is going to be equal to departure delay minus arrival delay. So these two, departure delay and arrival delay, as you can see them here, departure delay is a double precision numeric variable, arrival delay also, and that's kind of how late they were leaving, how late they were arriving, that type of thing. So what I'm doing here is I'm telling the mutate function to create a new variable called gain, how much time it's made up in the air or how much time it's lost in the air, which is the difference between the departure delay and the arrival delay. And if I run this, remember we've got a really big data set with lots of variables. If I run that command, what you will see happen is it's printed the output below in my command line. So it ran and then it's returned this tibble 336,776 rows by 20 variables. And if you look, it's kind of showing us what the different variables are. And if we look here, it's truncated it, and then it's kind of said, look, I'm not going to print all this out, but there are then 12, the ones that you can see on the screen, plus 12 more variables and lots more rows essentially. But what you can see is at the end here, if I highlight it, we now have a variable called gain, which is a double precision variable, but we can't actually see it, we can't actually look at it. So that's kind of, it's good to know it worked, but we'd kind of like to inspect that variable or be able to see it in our data frame in some way. One of the things I did here, and part of the reason this has happened, the command worked, but if you notice, I didn't save it as an object. Okay, so all I did was I ran the command and it's printed the output for us below in the command line. It's not created a new variable, a new object in our environment up here, as you can see. But what I will do now is I'll do the same sort of thing and create a new object. I'll call it df for data frame, and we're using the assignment operator. And what I'm saying again is exactly the same thing as we did above, saying take the flight's data and then use the mutate function to calculate a new variable called gain, which is a function of the departure delay minus arrival delay. So it's going to be a double precision numeric variable that shows us how much time the flight made up or lost when it was delayed, essentially. If I run that, what it will do is create the data frame, and then we could use the view command and look at that, and we'll be able to see the df object. It will have gain tagged appended to the end of the data frame. But sometimes if you're working with a huge data frame, like this is pretty big, it's got thousands of rows and about 20 variables. 20 variables, 20 features isn't that much, it could be a lot more. But another useful method that we could use, or kind of an attribute we could use here with mutate, is there are two. There are dot after and dot before. So what I've done here, if you look, we haven't run this command yet, is I've given the same command as above, so we're taking flights and then we're mutating it to create this gain variable. But then I've put a comma after our equation here to create our new variable. And then I've used a dot, you can see there's a little period there, after equals day. So if we go back and look at our flights data set here, so we've got loads and loads of variables here. What that instruction is doing is saying, when you create that new variable gain, place it after the variable day, okay, in the data set. So let's run that command. And you see now it's created our new data frame. It's get as a new object, same as before. But if I then click on view DF, it'll take a second or two because it's still a big data frame. But that should create a new pop-up window up here next to our script where we will be able to see that, more easily inspect that gain variable once it arrives. So there we go, it took a few seconds, but as you can see when we're looking at this, we said put the gain variable, there it is, after the day variable. And you can see here, these are the values, these are some of the values for this gain. So this obviously lost 9 minutes. It arrived later. It departed late and arrived even later than it was expected to. Some of these others the same. Some of them are positive where they've made up some time. Okay, so that's one thing that's quite interesting to know. So we're using mutate to create new variables from old variables. We might need to create a weighted variable from two of our other variables or some of the things we've measured, and that's the sort of thing we're doing here. So let's create another one just as an example. And what I will do is I'll demonstrate here. We use this dot after method. We'll use dot before as well because it does a similar sort of thing in that it allows you to specify where to put the variable in the data frame. This time it will put it before whatever variable you specify. So if we go back and look at flights, month is here after year. So if we say we want it before month, it should put our variable in between year and month. Okay, so what I'm going to do this time is I'm going to create another variable. So I'm going to call it, create as a separate object, df2, and we're going to take the flights data, we're going to pipe it in. So we're saying, and then use the mutate function, create a new variable called speed. That's going to be a function of distance, which is another variable in our data frame. Let's have a look at that quickly. So where is distance? There it is. And we've also got time, haven't we, divided by air time, and then times 60. So I'm doing a little bit of maths here. What I'm doing essentially is creating a speed variable that gives us the speed in miles per hour as specified in the comments above. And then I'm using dot before and saying, create that new variable called speed, put it in the data frame before the month column. Okay, let's run that, see what happens. Sorry, better highlight all of the commands to run it. Okay, and it's created, you can see it's created our object, df2. If we view df2, this will, as ever, it's a big data frame, it's going to take a few seconds. Have a sip of your drink whilst you're waiting, I guess. Still thinking, it will pop up in a second. There we go. And as you can see there, what we've got is in between year and month. We said put it before month. We've got this new variable speed, and it's telling us it's giving us the kind of mean speed, the miles per hour, the mean kind of miles per hour. Okay, so pretty good. That's good. Useful so far. So there are some other commands. You'd have to go to the documentation on mutate and have a look and have a read to see all the various things you can do with it. I'm just going to mention a couple of other things that are useful, like useful attributes or methods you can use with this function. So you can control which variables to keep using this dot keep method. So we used dot before, we used dot after, and the used argument. And what that does is it specifies that we keep only the columns that were involved or created when we ran the mutate function. So if we did this, we're likely going to want to save it as a separate object, because maybe we're wanting a reduced data frame that's easier to work with for certain types of analysis that we might need to do. So what we're going to do this time is we're going to take our flights data frame, we're going to then pipe it in and say, and then use the mutate function. And what we're doing here is we're specifying create a new variable called gain, which is the departure delay minus the arrival delay. So we've already seen that we created a variable like that previously. And then also, so a comma, and then another one. So multiple, this time we're putting multiple variables to create. Create another variable called hours, which is going to be, I guess it's going to return some sort of integer, which is going to be the airtime divided by 60. So how many hours the flight was roughly. Okay, and then another comma, and then a third. This time we're creating a third new variable called gain per hour. And to create that, we're going to use these new variables we're creating above, so gain and hours. So gain per hour is a function of gain divided by hours. Okay, so we've then got another comma, so we've created three new variables using mutate all in one command, essentially, just separating them by each of the equations by commas. And then I'm using this dot keep. And then I've set that equal to, and look as this is a character, so this is a string within double quotes. And I've used, the syntax I've used is used. So what this is saying is, create this new data frame object, data frame 3, df3, and the only things to keep are the things that we've created here using our mutate function. Okay, so let's have a look at that. So the variables we've created. So let's run that command and see what it looks like. So it's created df3 with 6 variables. Okay, let's run the view on df3, see what we get. So the only things that should be contained in this are the variables that were used in these different commands, and you can see there. So we used departure delay and arrival delay to create gain, and then we used airtime and divided by 60 to create hours, and then we used gain and hours to create gain per hour. Okay, so as you can see there, pretty useful. Dot keep equals used. It's basically created a new data frame that only contains the different variables that we used in this particular object we created. Okay, loads more that can be done, I think, with the mutate function, but I'm going to stop there because this video is already long enough. Hopefully this was helpful. It is going to be a key function that you will use a lot when you're trying to tidy up and manipulate data, because you're often going to want to create new variables from others, such as working out miles per hour, things like that, from things that are from other variables that have been recorded. Okay, so I will stop recording now. I hope this was useful. Thanks for watching and listening, and the next video and probably the few after that, I'll carry on covering more of these type of these key functions for tidying data relating to either columns or rows. Okay, thanks very much.